you've both made the point about the right stack for your company and what you need individually. And there's so much choice out there. One of the things that I find must be challenging for marketers is a lot of the tools are really more apples to oranges than apples to apples, or if they are apples to apples, it's Golden Delicious versus Macintosh. So they're still not, do I take the the big Macintosh or the small Macintosh? So when you've got that kind of variety, um, how can marketers ensure that they're choosing the right technology tools for their specific needs? Any advice there? And maybe Christopher, you can also talk a little bit about how it applied to you. But Christine, kick us off.
Way back when the dinosaurs roamed this earth, there used to be a thing called requirements definition. Where I know it's so passé in the age of Agile, but I think that's part of the core problem. I mean, it's twofold. I'd be interested what Christopher's take is on this. I think part of it is, and what I see is, companies are not taking the time to say, let me do my requirements definition. What do I really need in a CRM system? What do I really need in a marketing automation system, right? Really, really need versus what everybody says I'm supposed to have, and then I wind up not using it. So I think going back to that requirements definition is absolutely key. I think the second piece is don't try to boil the ocean, right? I see people that say, well, I'm going to go out and do Salesforce and it's Marketo and it's going to be ZenIQ and it's going to Bombara, right? One step at a time, right? Because if they don't fully understand the environment they're in, and the ripple effect, because it ripples out to sales and it ripples out to the rest of the organization, then start to layer on as you learn more versus trying to just replicate the Cisco stack.
Right.
And you just mentioned Agile. That's so awesome. Actually, every company I've been to over the past several years, I've implemented that sort of Agile marketing thinking, and I haven't yet with where I currently am because the marketing stack isn't right. So getting that right, and then thinking through that Agile framework is less big strategy and more little strategy and iterative. With the right stack can make a really effective team. And to answer the question, I think it's important to distinguish between need and want. And it's so funny how, like, even my current team, there's a lot of want. And I get it. Some of it's, again, there's some cool tech out there. And it's really not, some of them are not even expensive, but it's really more about the need and getting that stack right. And I go back to the questions of why, right? Why does that support the goal? Why that tool? Why now? You need to answer those questions before, or as a part of kind of defining the strategy, right? Does it add the appropriate level of value? Is it there to optimize performance or make it easier for teams? The easier part's important too. What impact will it make today? What will it make tomorrow? And impact for the future? You got to kind of define that. And by the way, there's nothing easy about building that stack, right? But putting that thought, as Christine mentioned, putting that thought up front and defining the strategy aligned to those goals can help make it easier. And again, how are you going to measure it? Is it about volume? Is it about quality? I think that measurement is another important part of that strategy because that's where everything starts to align.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Chris. Go ahead.
Sorry, and I was just going to add to that, let's not forget about data, because I think oftentimes we're so fixated on functionality that we really don't always look at the underlying data structures of these applications and go through it and say, does the data fit together like this, right? Or is it like this? We have to address the data issue. Yeah, I know that big stinky pile of data that we all been ignoring for the past multiple decades. we have to address the data issue as we go through the stack build.
Absolutely. And I do want to go back for minutes to what you said, Christine, about the requirements document. And, it's really, it's such an interesting kind of Martech 101, right? You just should be doing it. And then you think about, like what Christopher said, where there's, a bunch of different constituents that all have their needs and wants, and how do you balance the absolute needs, the business needs versus the user needs, and then some of the wants that maybe you want to test out without kind of going crazy? Like, how do you fold all that into making the right decision when you're, and make sure that's woven into the requirements document? Christine, any thoughts on that?
I do think that there needs to be a vision, and I know, I know that we're all a little visioned out because there's so many visions. But when I was a CMO, I had a vision for this marketing organization, and I know Christopher does too, because I've talked to Christopher, and he has a very clear vision. It's having that vision, because I think part of the key is that Martech is not about right now, today. It really is, where do I need this organization to be a year from today, 3 years from today? I know that sounds scary, but you actually can plan it out 3 years from today. So that there's this balance between what's that core functionality that I absolutely have today, what's the functionality that I know that I'm going to need to be able to get to a year from today, and then looking at it and with the organization underneath it, saying, do I have the competencies today within my team to actually utilize this technology or utilize this capability to achieve the business objective? Or do I have to go do, or do I have to make some changes? And what does that do to the solution? So let me sort of see if I can't clarify that a little bit more. There was, a lot of discussion around omni-channel types of applications, right? So it used to be you had to look at things like SDL when they were in that business. They're not anymore. You look at Clarabridge, and you're looking at these very large, applications in order to basically do true omni-channel. I call it surround sound marketing, along with the metrics. If that's the direction of the organization that you need to go, and you can't afford a Clarabridge, or you can't afford some of these things, then you start to look at it and say, are there other solutions? And I think this is where we need to look at some of the emerging technology that's coming out. There are vendors now that actually have that capability baked into a much smaller application that is much more user-friendly, that is structured in a way in which organizations can grow into that. They can grow into using it, right? It's not out of the box. You have to go be able to master something as complex as these very large applications. And so I think in my view, how I've approached it, and Christopher maybe has a different approach, is this balancing. But it's got to be in line of, where am I going? And where does this organization need to be in order to achieve that business objective? In some ways, irrespective of all the noise that's going on around you, right? And then how do I actually make sure the team can get there through either how we implement, functionality over time, or through how we actually train to build those competencies so they can start to go do that. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but.
It does.
No, it does. It absolutely does. And I think for me, it's focus. Anything we do, start with focus, right? So I think the marketing tech average stack is 12 to 16 different tools, right? That's a lot. We start with, count them on one hand. What's the most important and why? And then things can kind of build around that, but you need that core backbone, to go back to that, that really is integrated, linking things together, the centralized data, getting that right. I think it's the most important part. And then you start doing the layers of the nice to haves, and those are okay. It's interesting. I forget the quote. you guys have had more colorful analogies than I've been sharing, but the whole idea of tech in general, whether that's home tech or Martech or whatnot, in many ways makes us more busy. So again, focusing in on that one hand to say these 5 things are going to make a business impact. Oh, this other thing is cool. Let's go play with that later. But count them on one hand. I think is the place to start.
Right. Christine, let's go back to what you were talking about a couple of minutes ago about the data, because you've both mentioned it and how important that is. Where in the process of building the Martech Stack do you need to make sure that you have the right data to support it, or that you've got the right integrations to bring in the data the way you need it? Does it have to be from the very beginning? Is there, you can make some decisions and then bring the data in from there? How does that fit in?
Can I go first?
Christopher, yes, go ahead.
No, I think, again, I've been marketing enterprise software for forever, actually. And when I go out on a sales call, I've always said it. You got to get your process right before you deploy technology. If you deploy technology with a bad process, you're going to have bad tech. And I think the same thing applies to Martech. If you've got bad data, you got to get that data right. So scrubbing, before you even deploy those 5 new things, is really, really important. Whether that be, in my case, we just updated thousands of records because we were missing industry data, and our business strategy is to actually target specific industries. So gaps in data, data integrity, how your CRM is set up for a go-forward sort of strategy, getting that right before deploying technology is so important. That's all about data quality. And again, if you get that right, then those insights that come later will be more meaningful.
And where does the long-term, sorry, Christine, go ahead, sorry.
And I echo what Christopher says, and I agree with you, but Christopher, I also think that it's not 100% right. We almost need to get to a point where core data elements are correct, and ancillary data is good enough, right, in certain areas. And I think that, and maybe, I'm hearing different things than you are, but what I hear is a lot of, well, we got to get everything right. Well, that's an ideal world, right? Let's have the name and the address and the email, and, let's have, what did they buy and what interactions did they have? Let's get that correct and complete and consistent across the systems. And there may be some other data that is, it's okay for it to be good enough, because it's not necessarily on the critical path for all of the core decisions.
And I go back to the, again, count them on one hand. And I totally agree. But get that one hand right before you go to the other secondary sort of things. I totally agree, Christine.
Yeah. And where does ownership for the long-term data management lie? Is it the chief marketer? Is the chief marketer working with someone in IT? How should that work in an ideal world? Christopher?
No, I'm laughing because it's probably one of my weaknesses, because I own it. I want to own it. I absolutely want to own it because I want to make sure it's right. I want answers to questions. I want to make sure that we're integrating all the right things. But it has to be a collaborative effort, without a doubt. And again, every organization is structured differently. Collaborating with IT, collaborating with all the stakeholders that will not just be viewing that data, but anyone who's touching that data, making sure you've got some standard operating procedures around what data integrity means. And that goes all the way down to the salespeople. And they're usually the culprits of being very bad about either not updating certain records or updating them wrong, or if I see a pick list with the word other, I just like want to, it's just bad, right? So again, getting it right up front. I think the CMOs should be, or the marketing leaders should be the owners of that. But again, it's a collaborative effort.
Any
Well,
additional
I
thoughts?
agree. Sorry, I keep speaking over you. I agree, Christopher. It's to me the analogy is very much like who owns the customer. Everybody owns the customer. Everybody owns the data. So and it's just too easy to say, well, it's marketing. You know, that's marketing's data or that's sales' data, and so it's not my problem. But everybody owns the customer. Everybody owns the data.
Yeah, makes sense. So speaking of people, let's talk a little bit about the users. I know buy-in can be a really big issue, and then actually getting people to use the technology. Christine, as you were saying, marketers, only 3% of marketers feel like they're getting the most out of their Martech, and part of that is because the users aren't taking advantage of all they can do with it, and there's lots of different reasons for that. But let's just talk about what are some things that chief marketers can do to encourage their marketing teams to use the technology that's at their fingertips. Anyone want to go for any hand raises on who wants to go first on that one?
Yeah, no, it's funny because I've been going through it as I've been dismantling some things and implementing some new things, and I go back to the collaborative effort. I don't believe in just rolling out technology because I decided. It really is a team effort. It's got to be that sort of collaboration. But at the same time, it's back to Christine's original point a while ago about vision. You got to paint that vision. And if you paint that vision in such a way where you know your team and you know what they need, people will get behind that. People will absolutely get behind that. And then in some cases, people are maybe stuck in their ways. Maybe there's some old school thinking. And as I mentioned early on, something I just love about marketing, and not all marketing leaders think this way, let alone marketing professionals, you have to constantly reinvent. And again, that's part of that vision that I share, and people get behind that because I think at the end of the day, they really, really, really want results. Marketing wants results because that's when people recognize that marketing is contributing to the top and bottom lines. But painting that vision and getting people behind that is the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. Christine?
Nice. Christopher summed it up very, very well.
All right, excellent. So now let's talk about having those vendor conversations. When you're trying to choose the right technology over the shiny object or over the great sales pitch, how do you make sure that you just stay focused on what you need and make that right decision? And is there any question that you should be asking vendors that maybe marketers aren't asking enough to make sure they make that right decision?
I go back to that comment I made earlier about having a requirements definition and having it documented and having it be a collaborative shared effort from all the constituents, including IT. Because in the end, as you go through an evaluation process, it's easy to get distracted. You like this sales rep versus the other sales rep. You like this particular company versus that particular company. It's our own individual emotions and the things that we respond to begin to cloud a rational decision. And so having this requirements documentation is very nicely black and white. It either does it or it doesn't do it. I think the other thing, and I come from the vendor world, Christopher and I have a little bit of the inside knowledge. I think the other thing is, as marketers, if you're going to evaluate something for consideration, then really step up and do it versus saying, well, I'm going to let the vendor do a demo using my data. No, do a proof of concept and actually try and use the system. Make that investment. So that you really feel for what it's like. How does the workflows work? Can they be modified, right? How does my data behave in this application? Does it actually work? If I'm up in AWS and this application happens to be sitting on a Google Cloud, how am I going to get this data between the two clouds? And I think too often we move from I'm going to make a serious evaluation and do all of this to, oh, this is very tedious and it's just that much quicker if somebody else does this and they show me that, and if we don't like it, SaaS, if we don't like it, we just won't renew it. So I really do believe that if you're going to evaluate again these core pieces, that it has to be a proof of concept, and it has to be an on-site proof of concept. Now, I'm not talking about some little bit piece of technology. I'm talking about the 5 that Christopher was saying that you absolutely positively have to get right.
Absolutely. Christopher.
Yeah, I would say avoid those vendors who just want to turn it on because it's that easy. I think there was a CEO of a tech company a while ago that literally for his company said it's that easy. We're like an ATM, you just push a button and it's there. And I think in technology in general, again, separate from some of the smaller tools, it's not about just turn it on. So I actually seek vendors that are going to stick with you throughout the whole process. And that whole process is before, during, and after deployment. And I've got some great examples of vendors that did that. They provided not only some great tech, but the expertise in how to set it up, this ongoing services to make sure we were getting the most out of it. And if they come back in 90 days, how are things going? That kind of vendor, that's the kind of partner you want for your Martech stack. Again, thinking through some of the core pieces, not some of the smaller, simpler tools out there, but getting that. I guess we're going to go back to the count 'em on 5. Get those 5 to 10. Those kind of vendors that will stick it out with you throughout the whole process. Really, really important.
Right, and it really makes sense for them too, because as Christine said, if you're not seeing the value and they're a SaaS-based product, that you can just turn it off. So it behooves them to stick around and make sure that you succeed and have that great customer experience with their tools. So speaking about the technology stack and how to get it right, and as we have been pretty much the whole conversation, what do you see next? Like, what is the future of the Martech stack? Do you see any standardizations? What can marketers expect as this, as the evolution goes forward?
So I'll start with this. This 50 category, 5,000 and ever fastly growing is an unsustainable market landscape. For those of us that have been around the block a couple of times, we've seen this story happen over and over again. There will be consolidation because it is equally unsustainable. If I look at the stack, and I actually got out the magnifying glass and started looking at all the logos, much of them are not systems, they're not applications. They are a feature that's being masqueraded as an application. And so for me, this triggers consolidation. We're going to see a lot of consolidation, but I do not believe it will be the consolidation of Oracle or Salesforce or SAP or whoever, IBM, buying up everybody and then them continuing to be an even larger 800-pound gorilla or a series of gorillas in the room. What I see on the horizon when I look at some of the newer technology that's coming out and the newer applications, of which I'm extremely just amazed at what some people are doing, is what I see is, yes, it's consolidation, but it will be replaced by newer, well thought out. How's that for good English? Better thought out technology that embraces current approaches. We have a problem in that older technology was built for older practices, and it doesn't easily accommodate new thoughts such as journey mapping, or such as looking at how do I actually leverage a journey map and do lead scoring based off journey mapping, or doing ABM in a truly omni-channel manner. So that's what I see on the horizon. It's not intended to scare anybody to say, oh, don't make a decision because it's going to change. Business goes forward, but I would not assume that the current big players in the marketplace are going to be buying up all these companies and integrating it. We've seen that happen and it's ugly. It doesn't work. So I do think that it's going to be a rise of a new crop of vendors, and I would steer very clear of, well, it's going to be all artificial intelligence based, and all we need to do is push a button. Not so fast. But look at the new ones.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's lots of buzz about artificial intelligence, machine learning, some exciting developments indeed. I mean, the concept of curated data that can decipher information in real time is very exciting. But to Christine's point, consolidation is an inevitability. Every software segment has gone through that. With expansion, there comes consolidation. But with that consolidation, there's the opportunity for innovation. And as some of these companies start to come together, that option for full end-to-end integration, that starts getting really exciting. Because again, if you think about all these disparate tools, not all of them even talk to each other or integrate. So with that consolidation could come that sort of integration part. And I think going back to the data conversation, that's what it's all about, right? So again, separate from AI and machine learning, just getting that data connected so that it's meaningful, that real-time data insights and making it actionable, that's an exciting future that's right around the corner. And I'd also add anything and everything that focuses on personalizing that whole customer experience, whether that's RTP on a website, whether that's, again, some variety of different techs out there that touch on that today. I think with that integration, with that personalization, we're going to see some really some cool advancements here in probably short order as well.
Excellent. Well, Christine and Christopher, thank you so much for all the great insight today. I know I have learned a lot, and I really appreciate what all of you that you shared with us, and I'm sure our audience does as well. And so also thanks for checking out our video today if you're a part of that audience. And I wanted to say that this concludes Future of the Martech Stack, brought to you by Martech Advisor. Thanks for viewing and have a great day.